The exact moment you hit the point of no return with your money. There is a specific dollar amount sitting inside your retirement account right now, and once you cross it, the game permanently changes in your favor. That number is $172,000. Not 100,000, not 200,000, 172,000. And nobody in financial media is talking about it because the number that matters most is the one nobody puts in the chart. Here is what makes that number different from every other retirement milestone you have ever heard. Below it, you are fighting. Above it, the money starts fighting for you. Not metaphorically, mathematically. And the gap between those two states is not effort or discipline or willpower. It is one specific threshold that most Americans are either 3 years away from or 20 years away from, and they have no idea which one they are. You have probably already felt what I am describing. You set up a retirement account. You contribute every month. You never missed a payment. You check the balance after 4 or 5 years of perfect behavior, and the number is underwhelming. You think, is this even working? And that feeling has a name. It is not failure. It is being on the wrong side of a mathematical threshold that nobody explained to you when you opened the account. Let me put real numbers on the problem before anything else, because vague is useless. All projections in this video use a 7% annual return, which is the S&P 500 historical average after adjusting for inflation, confirmed by Robert Shiller's dataset at Yale. Conservative, documented, not a best-case number invented to make a chart look impressive. If you have $50,000 invested today and you add $500 a month at 7%, after 10 years, your balance sits at roughly $216,000. Your contributions over that decade totaled $60,000. The market added about $106,000. But here is what that table does not show you. The exact month when your portfolio stops being mostly your deposits and starts being mostly your returns. That transition is not gradual. It is a crossing. And it happens at a specific, calculable moment. At $100,000, 7% annual return generates $7,000 per year passively, roughly $580 a month. That is almost exactly one average American monthly contribution. At that point, your portfolio is doing 1 full month of your work for you, every single month, without clocking in. At $172,000, 7% generates $12,040 per year, $1,003 per month. Now the portfolio is contributing more each month than the average American adds manually. The second worker has arrived and he just started outpacing you. That crossing, the moment when your returns exceed your contributions, is the point of no return. Because from that moment forward, even if you never added another single dollar, the compound engine would continue building. Your deposits become secondary. Your rate becomes primary. The math flips. The math. And here's the brutal part. Nobody tells you. According to Fidelity's Q4 2025 data, the average American between ages 35 and 44 has just $39,958 saved for retirement. Not $172,000, $39,000. Which means the average American is not close to the point of no return. They are not even in the same decade as it. And almost every financial product, every advisory fee, every mutual fund pitch is designed around the assumption that they will never need to understand the exact threshold, because confused investors are profitable investors. Stick with me, because the most expensive mistake you can make right now is diagnosing your situation wrong. And I am about to show you that 90% of people who feel stuck are stuck for a reason that has nothing to do with what they think. If you are getting real value out of what we are covering here, subscribe to the channel. The algorithm genuinely will not show you this content again if you do not, and we cover this kind of specific number-first analysis every single week. Now, I want you to think about a very specific machine before we go any further. Think about a cargo ship engine. Not a car engine. A cargo ship engine. One of the massive ones that takes 15 minutes to start up, consumes enormous fuel just to get moving, and feels like it is doing almost nothing for the first 20 minutes of operation. Everything shakes, everything groans, the water barely moves, and then something shifts. The hull reaches displacement speed. The propellers find their rhythm. And suddenly the same engine that felt like it was barely making progress is moving 100,000 tons across the Atlantic at 20 knots. The fuel is the same. The engine is the same. But the physics of the situation changed at a specific threshold. Your retirement portfolio works exactly like that. For years, maybe a decade, you pour in fuel, your contributions, and the thing barely moves relative to how much you are putting in. The engine is running, everything is technically working, but you are still in the startup phase, grinding against inertia. Then you cross the threshold, the hull finds its rhythm, and the same money, the same engine, starts producing a completely different result. Not because anything changed about the fund or the return rate or the market, because the base finally got large enough for the percentage to produce output you can feel. The problem is that most people interpret the startup phase as evidence that the ship is broken. They start looking for a different engine. They hear about a biotech sector that tripled. They open a trading account during the next market crash. They redirect 3 months of contributions into something speculative. And every single one of those moves delays the threshold crossing, which compounds against you in a way that is genuinely staggering once you see the math. Here's what I mean. 2 investors, same age, same income, same fund. Investor A stays the course. Investor B redirects 6 months of contributions into a stock tip from a coworker in 2022. The stock drops 38%, and B holds for 18 months, hoping for recovery before selling at a loss. The actual dollars lost in that decision, roughly 3,200. Small, right? The compounding cost of those dollars never arriving at the threshold. At 7% over 25 years, that 3,200 would have become approximately $17,300. Gone. Not from a bad market, from a misdiagnosis of what the actual problem was. Dalbar, the financial analytics firm that has tracked actual investor behavior since 1994, published data showing the average equity fund investor underperformed the S&P 500 by 3.4 percentage points annually over the 20-year period ending 2023. The S&P returned 10.2%. The average investor captured 6.8%. That gap is not fees. It is behavioral timing. Buying after the run-up, selling after the drop, and chasing complexity at the exact moment when simplicity was the highest performing option. 3.4 percentage points sounds like almost nothing. On a $200,000 portfolio over 20 years at 10.2% versus 6.8%, the behavioral tax costs you exactly $1 million. $1 million. Not lost to a collapsing company. Not lost to fraud. Lost because the ship felt slow in the startup phase and the investor decided the engine must be broken. Now I want to introduce someone whose situation I am going to come back to throughout this video, because this becomes real when it has a face. Her name is Sandra. She is 47 years old. She works as a hospital administrator in Columbus, Ohio, earning $86,000 a year. She has been contributing to her 401k since she was 32. She has never missed a contribution, never panic sold. She runs the projections on her current balance of $94,000 and thinks, if this rate continues, I will have maybe $380,000 by 65. That feels wrong for 15 years of perfect behavior. She is starting to look at whether she should be doing something different. Rental property, individual stocks, anything that feels like it is actually moving. Sandra is not making a math error. She is making a diagnostic error. And the cost of that specific error, staying stuck in the wrong diagnosis, is the difference between retiring at 65 and working until 72. We will come back to her and close her story at the end. For now, stay with me. Because the number that actually explains Sandra's situation, and probably yours, is not the one on her statement. It is the gap between where she is and the point of no return. And the fix is not what you think. Here is the anti-diagnosis. And this is the part that financial media will never explain clearly, because there is no product to sell once you understand it. You think the problem is your return rate. You think if you could just find a better fund, a smarter allocation, a higher yielding asset class, the trajectory would change. That diagnosis feels correct. It feels correct because it is the diagnosis the entire financial services industry is built around. Pick better investments. Pay for professional guidance. Buy the premium access. Optimize the portfolio. Every single one of those solutions costs money and generates revenue for someone who is not you. The actual problem is your distance from the threshold, not your return rate, your distance. Let me prove this with numbers, because this is the kind of claim that collapses without them. Sandra has $94,000. She is contributing $400 a month. At 7% annual return, she crosses $172,000, the point of no return, in approximately 9 years. She will be 56. That leaves her 9 years of threshold-crossed compounding before 65. Her projected balance at 65 under this scenario, approximately $412,000. Now watch what happens when we change only one variable, not the fund, not the return rate, just the monthly contribution. Sandra increases her contribution from $400 to $650 per month. $250 extra dollars. She crosses the threshold at age 52 instead of 56. 4 years earlier. Same fund, same 7%. Same market. Her projected balance at 65, approximately $560,000. $148,000 more. From $250 extra dollars a month. Now let's run the alternative that most people in Sandra's position actually consider. She keeps contributing $400 a month but moves into a more aggressive fund seeking 10% annual return instead of 7%. Let's say she actually hits it consistently without panic selling during the inevitable down years, without the behavioral tax Dalbar has documented for 30 straight years. Her projected balance at 65, approximately $490,000. $490,000 versus $560,000. The boring contribution increase beats the exciting return optimization by $70,000, and the contribution increase carries zero additional volatility, zero extra risk, no portfolio watching, no news alerts, no panic decisions at 2 a.m. The lever that actually moves Sandra's number is not the market, it is the deposit. That is the anti-diagnosis. You think the problem is where you are invested. The real problem is how fast you are moving toward the threshold. Here is why this stays invisible. The financial information environment is structurally built to make return rate feel like the primary variable. Articles comparing funds, YouTube thumbnails about the best ETF of the year, ads for premium research platforms, debates about sector rotation. All of it orbits return rate because return rate is monetizable. There are products attached to return rate optimization. There is nothing to sell attached to increase your monthly contribution to the same boring index fund you already own. That advice generates zero revenue for anyone in the financial industry, so nobody amplifies it. And here's the second layer of the problem. The threshold crossing is invisible on your statement. Your brokerage app shows you your total balance and your total return percentage. It does not show you the month when your passive returns exceeded your active contributions. It does not flag the point of no return. It does not tell you whether you are 9 years away or 23 years away, because knowing that number would make you a more empowered investor. And empowered investors make fewer trades, need less advice, and generate less fee revenue. Now I want to show you the table that nobody builds for you. All of these scenarios assume 7% annual return, the same documented inflation-adjusted S&P average. The only variable is the monthly contribution amount and the resulting threshold crossing age. Monthly contribution of $200. Current balance of $50,000. Crosses $172,000 at age 61. Years of threshold crossed compounding before 65. 4. Projected balance at 65. $179,000. Monthly contribution of $400. Current balance of $50,000. Crosses $172,000 at age 54. Years of threshold crossed compounding before 65. 11. Projected balance at 65. $322,000. Monthly contribution of $700. Current balance of $50,000. Crosses $172,000 at age 50. Years of threshold crossed compounding before 65. 15. Projected balance at 65. $541,000. Return rate, constant. Time frame, constant. Age at start, constant. The only variable was the monthly deposit. and the 65-year-old result moved from 179,000 to 541,000. 3 times the outcome from 3.5 times the contribution, because crossing the threshold earlier gives the compound engine more years to run at full power. Notice the pattern. It is not linear. Every year you cross the threshold earlier is worth more than the previous year, because each earlier year adds compounding on top of a larger base. The curve is not a ramp. It is a staircase that gets steeper with every step you take sooner. This is the core mechanic behind almost every retirement disappointment I have ever observed. People spend the first 15 years of their investing life feeding the engine. They never get the engine to threshold crossing speed because contributions stay at whatever number they typed on an enrollment form years ago, and nobody ever told them to update it. Vanguard's 2025 data showed that the median 401k contribution rate among millennials was 8.9%. The recommended rate from every independent financial planning body is 15%. That gap, 8.9 to 15, is not a failure of character. It is institutional inertia. You set the number once, life moved on, the number stayed frozen, and the threshold drifted further away every single year without making a sound. Now let me give you the fee layer because it sits underneath all of this and almost nobody calculates it correctly. The U.S. Department of Labor published a finding that a 1% difference in annual fees reduces your retirement balance by 28% at retirement. Not 1% less, 28% less. That is not vague. That is a specific, documented multiplier. If Sandra has $94,000 in an actively managed fund, charging 1.2% in combined expense ratios, which Morningstar's 2024 fund fee study found is completely average for actively managed U.S. equity funds, and she switches today to a Vanguard Total Stock Market Index fund charging 0.03%, that single decision is worth approximately $97,000 at retirement. One decision, one login, 12 minutes. $97,000. But here is the piece that makes fees genuinely dangerous in Sandra's specific situation. The fee drag does not just reduce the terminal balance, it pushes the threshold crossing date further out. At 1.2% drag, Sandra's net return drops to 5.8%. At 5.8%, she does not cross $172,000 until age 58 instead of 56. 2 extra years of pre-threshold grinding. 2 fewer years of post-threshold acceleration. The fee does not just take money, it steals time. And in compound math, stolen time is worth more than stolen dollars. This is the specific, calculable reason why your financial advisor building a, quote, diversified portfolio, end quote, while charging 1% of assets under management is not a neutral service. A fee-only financial planner who charges by the hour for tax planning, estate structure, and Social Security timing optimization is providing genuinely specialized work worth paying for. An advisor who charges 1% annually to maintain an index fund allocation and tell you not to panic during corrections is charging you between $40,000 and $120,000 over a 30-year period for something that requires no human labor once the fund is selected. The compound engine generates the wealth. The fee structure decides how much of that wealth reaches you versus someone else. Same engine, different destination. Now, stay with me, because we are about to get into the most counterintuitive part of this entire argument. The thing that no retirement calculator ever shows you. The reason why 2 people with the exact same balance at 65 can have completely opposite outcomes, and it has nothing to do with how they invested. Here's what the retirement calculator never shows you. 2 investors, same age, same fund, same balance at 65, $500,000, same withdrawal rate, 4%, which is $20,000 per year. One of them runs out of money at year 16. The other dies at 88 with over $400,000 still in the account. Same money, same rate, same withdrawal, different sequence of returns. This is called sequence of returns risk, and it is the final trap that catches people who did everything else right. While you are accumulating, working, contributing, buying shares every month, a market crash is actually somewhat useful to you. You are buying more shares at a lower price. The engine is acquiring inventory on sale. A 30% crash when you are 42 with 23 years of contributions ahead is uncomfortable. Mathematically, it is fine. the shares recover. You bought more of them cheaply. When you are in the withdrawal phase, retired, selling shares to pay rent and groceries, a 30% crash in your first year of retirement is a different animal entirely. You are now forced to sell at the bottom. You are permanently depleting the base. Every share sold at the low is gone. It will not participate in the recovery. And the recovery that eventually arrives is working on a smaller pool of capital than you started with. William Bengen, who published the original 4% research in the Journal of Financial Planning in 1994, built his framework around historically bad sequences of returns. He was finding a withdrawal rate that survived the worst cases. Financial media stripped the caveats, called it a rule, and handed it to millions of retirees as a fixed target without explaining it was built around worst-case stress testing, not guaranteed safety. For someone retiring at 62 or 63 before Medicare eligibility at 65, the fragility window is even longer, and the 4% assumption carries a failure rate nobody discusses honestly. The hedge is not a better fund or a higher return. The hedge is a cash buffer. 1 to 2 years of living expenses in short-term, low-volatility assets, money market funds or short-term treasury bills, built deliberately in the 3 to 5 years before your target retirement date. If the market drops 30% in your first year of retirement and you have 2 years of living expenses in cash, you live off the buffer. You do not touch the portfolio. You let the compound engine recover before you start drawing on it. You give the threshold-crossed portfolio time to reassert itself. This decision cannot be made reactively. The moment the market is already down 30% and fear is at its peak is the worst possible moment to design a withdrawal strategy. It has to be architected in advance, before the event, when calm math is available. Most people do not design it at all. They retire into a plan that says 4% and hope the sequence cooperates. Now let me close Sandra's story, because she has been sitting in this video with a diagnostic error and a trajectory that feels wrong and a frustration that is completely legitimate, and she deserves a real resolution. Sandra, 47, hospital administrator in Columbus. $86,000 a year, $94,000 saved, contributing $400 a month, projected threshold crossing at age 56, projected balance at 65, approximately $412,000. Not enough, not by a wide margin. Here is what the numbers actually show for Sandra if she changes 3 things, none of which require extraordinary discipline or a dramatic lifestyle overhaul. First, she audits her 401k fund selections. Her current blended expense ratio is 1.1%. She logs in, finds the index fund equivalent inside the same plan, most corporate plans have one, and switches. 12 minutes. That single decision moves her projected balance at 65 from $412,000 to approximately $480,000, $68,000 from one login. Second, she increases her monthly contribution from $400 to $650. $250 extra per month. She does this by redirecting half of her next annual merit increase before lifestyle absorbs it. Her take-home pay still goes up on the other half. She does not feel deprived, but now she crosses the threshold at 52 instead of 56. 4 more years of post-threshold compounding. Her projected balance at 65, approximately $575,000. Third, she builds a deliberate 18-month cash buffer starting at age 62, 3 years before her target retirement date. She does this by reducing her equity allocation gradually and parking the difference in a money market fund. This does not reduce her total invested assets. It repositions a portion of them into sequence of returns insurance. If the market cooperates in her first year of retirement, she draws from the portfolio normally. If it does not, she draws from the buffer and gives the portfolio time to recover without being forced sold at the bottom. Sandra at 65, $575,000 in her retirement accounts, an 18-month cash buffer, a withdrawal strategy calibrated to actual conditions rather than a static rule. Combined with Social Security, even accounting for the Congressional Budget Office projection of a 15 to 20% reduction if Congress does not act before the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund projected depletion in 2033. Sandra has a real retirement, not a theoretical one, a specific, calculable one. Built not from finding a better fund or timing the market or discovering a secret the industry was hiding, built from correctly diagnosing where the actual levers are and pressing them in the right order. That is the point of no return. Not a dramatic moment, not a windfall, a threshold number, a crossing date. And the single most important financial question you can ask yourself right now is not what is my return rate. It is how many years away is my threshold crossing, and what is the cheapest, lowest friction way to move that date earlier. Here are 3 specific actions, calibrated to exactly what we covered. 0 extraordinary willpower required. Action 1. Calculate your threshold crossing date today. Open any compound interest calculator. Enter your current balance, your current monthly contribution, and 7% annual return. Find the year your balance crosses $172,000. Write that year down. Then ask, what monthly contribution would move that crossing 2 years earlier? Run the number. That gap, the dollars per month between your current crossing date and a crossing date 2 years sooner, is the single most important number in your financial life right now. Not your return rate, not your fund selection, that gap. Action 2. Audit your expense ratio in the next 48 hours. Log into your retirement account. Find the Fund Detail tab. Look for the column that says Expense Ratio. If any number is above 0.5%, search for a comparable index fund inside the same plan. In most corporate plans, a low-cost alternative exists, and switching takes 3 clicks. The Department of Labor's own data shows a 1% fee difference reduces your retirement balance by 28%. That is not a small number. Calculate what 28% of your projected retirement balance is. That is the specific dollar amount your current fund selection may be quietly extracting from you every year. Action 3. Pre-decide your next income event right now. When is your next raise, bonus, or tax refund realistically arriving? Write the approximate date. Write the expected amount. Write the exact percentage you will redirect to your retirement contribution the day it lands. Make this decision in writing today, before the money exists in your hand. The decision made right now in the abstract, while there is no actual cash present and no competing purchase pulling at your attention, is the decision that executes correctly. The decision made in the moment while holding new money almost never goes to investments. The architecture of the decision matters more than the willpower behind it. Sandra increased her contribution to $650 last month. Her next performance review is in April. She has already written down that 60% of any merit increase goes directly to her 401k before the new paycheck becomes the new normal. She will not feel the difference in year 2. She probably will not feel it in year 5. But at 52, when her monthly statement shows passive returns that for the first time in her life exceed what she deposited that month, when the ship finally finds its speed, she will understand exactly what happened. The threshold crossed. The engine stopped needing her to push it, and she will have 13 years of that engine running at full power before she decides whether she still wants to be working at 65. The point of no return is not a lucky moment that happens to other people. It is a calculable date. It is sitting in your specific numbers right now, and the only question is whether you cross it while you still have enough time for it to matter, or whether the financial industry's carefully maintained silence about that number keeps you grinding in phase 1 for a decade longer than you had to. If this video gave you one number you did not have before, subscribe to the channel. That is the only thing that tells the algorithm this content is worth showing to more people. We do this kind of specific number-first analysis every week. The cargo ship is already running. The only question is how fast you get it to speed.